The first time I met her, I should have listened to the warning in her eyes. They weren't the eyes of a woman welcoming her daughter's new husband. They were the eyes of a predator, sharp and measuring, like she was calculating exactly how much space I was allowed to take in her daughter's life. That was years ago. Back then, I told myself it was nerves, a trick of the moment. But now, sitting across from her at the dinner table, I knew better. Every word she spoke was a knife, honed and aimed at me. "You know," she said, her voice sweet as poison, "Emily could have married someone with ambition, someone with a future." I felt the sting before the words even landed. Across the table, Emily dropped her gaze, refusing to meet mine. Her silence was worse than her mother's venom. I tried to laugh it off. "I'm building a future. Slowly maybe, but it's ours." Her mother leaned forward, her eyes narrowing like a hawk's. "Slow doesn't feed a family. Slow doesn't protect a woman. My daughter deserves more than this." This. As if I were a mistake she couldn't wait to erase. Emily sipped her wine. No defense, no protest. Just silence. It was like that every time we gathered here. Every meal turned into a battlefield, me dodging her attacks while my wife sat like a ghost at my side. At first, I thought Emily didn't want to fight with her mother, but the longer it went on, the clearer it became. She didn't want to fight for me. And in that silence, I began to lose her. Weeks passed, but her mother's words never left me. They followed me to work, to bed, into the small, quiet moments that should have been ours. The worst part wasn't the insults. It was the doubt they planted. Maybe I wasn't enough. Maybe Emily was realizing it too. One night, I came home to find Emily already on the phone with her mother. She was laughing, really laughing in a way I hadn't heard in months. The moment she saw me, the laughter died. She ended the call quickly, like a child caught doing something wrong. "Long day?" she asked, forcing a smile. "Who are you talking to?" I asked, though I already knew. She shrugged. "My mom." Always her mom. Always between us. The breaking point came on a stormy night in October. Rain hammered against the windows. Thunder rolled in the distance. I walked into her mother's living room, already bracing myself for another round of quiet humiliation. But nothing could have prepared me for what I saw. Her mother was seated across from a man I'd never met. Tall, polished, expensive suit. The kind of man who looked like he had never known failure. And Emily, my Emily, was smiling at him. Smiling in a way she hadn't smiled at me in years. Her mother's voice cut through the air. "See, Emily, this is the kind of man who could give you the life you deserve. Not struggle, not excuses, real security, real love." The word love twisted like a blade. I looked at Emily, begging her with my eyes to deny it, to tell her mother she was wrong, that she had chosen me. But Emily didn't speak. She didn't move. She just sat there, frozen but not protesting. That silence was louder than thunder. I stood there, drenched in betrayal, my world collapsing in a single breath. My wife wasn't mine anymore. Maybe she never had been. That night, I drove aimlessly through the rain, streets blurring in my headlights. My chest felt hollow, my hands trembling on the wheel. I was a man without a home, without a partner, without even the dignity of knowing my marriage had been real. And then, like fate's cruel twist, I saw her. A figure at a bus stop, umbrella broken, hair plastered to her face by the storm. But I knew that face. I hadn't seen it in years, but I knew it instantly. Claire. She had been my friend long before Emily. She had loved me once, quietly, faithfully, in a way I had been too blind to see. And now,
as she lifted her eyes and recognized me, I saw something I hadn't seen in years: warmth. No judgment, no poison, no silence, just warmth. By the time I pulled over and she slid into the passenger seat, shivering and smiling through the rain, I knew something had shifted. The storm outside was violent, merciless, but for the first time in years, I felt a spark of calm, a light in the darkness. I didn't know it yet, but that night was the beginning of the end, and in a way, the beginning of everything else.
The days after that storm felt like moving through ruins. Emily and I no longer spoke like husband and wife. Our words were short, clipped, like strangers in the same house. The silence was worse than any argument. It was the sound of something dead, pretending to breathe. One night, I found her sitting at the kitchen table, staring at her phone. The glow lit her face, and I could see his name on the screen, the man her mother had paraded in front of us. I didn't shout, I didn't break, I just asked, quietly, "Do you love him?" Emily flinched. For a second, I thought she might lie, might reach for some fragile excuse to hold us together. But then she whispered, "I don't know if I love him, but I don't love this. Not anymore." Her words were a guillotine, sharp, final. That night, I packed a bag and left. The divorce wasn't explosive. It wasn't fiery. It was worse than that. It was cold. Papers signed, property divided, memories boxed up and shoved into closets we'd never open again. Her mother smiled through it all, like a queen watching her enemy's execution. She had won. She had destroyed one version of me. But what she didn't know was that while she had destroyed one version of me, she had unknowingly freed another. I started seeing Claire more often. At first, it was just coffee. Safe, friendly, two old souls catching up. She listened. God, how she listened. Not like Emily, who always seemed to be waiting for someone else's opinion, someone else's permission. She heard me. She heard the silence between my words, the pain I couldn't bring myself to say out loud. And she didn't try to fix it. She just sat there with me in it, her hand resting lightly over mine. One evening, after too many cups of coffee and hours of talking, I walked her home. The night was cool, the streets empty, and when she turned to say goodnight, I saw the way her eyes lingered on me. Gentle, patient, like she'd been waiting years for this moment. I kissed her. It wasn't the desperate kiss of a man running from loneliness. It was steady, sure, like two puzzle pieces finally finding their place. And for the first time in years, I felt alive.
But healing isn't instant. There were nights I woke up sweating, Emily's silence haunting me. There were moments when guilt gnawed on me. Guilt for failing her, guilt for letting her mother win, guilt for starting over when everything still felt raw. Claire never pushed. She never demanded I be whole before I was ready. She simply reminded me, in 100 small ways, that I was worth more than I had been led to believe. When I doubted myself, she reminded me of the man I had been before the poison, before the shadows at the table. When I broke down, she held me without words. And slowly, piece by piece, I became myself again. Months later, I ran into Emily by chance at a grocery store. She looked older, not in years, but in spirit. Her mother wasn't by her side, but her absence was written all over Emily's posture, her clipped voice. She tried to smile, to make small talk, but I saw the truth in her eyes. She wasn't happy. The man her mother had pushed her toward wasn't there, and I wondered if he ever had been. We spoke briefly, like two people who had shared a dream and woken up from it. There was no anger left in me, only pity. Not for her, but for the way she had allowed herself to be owned, molded, used. As I walked away, I realized something. For years, I had thought her mother ruined my life, but the truth was simpler. I had let them. Not anymore. That night, I stood on the balcony of Claire's apartment, watching the city lights. She came up behind me, wrapping her arms around my waist, resting her cheek against my back. "Penny for your thoughts," she asked softly. I took her hands in mine, kissed them, and whispered, "I think I'm finally free." She smiled, the kind of smile that doesn't just touch lips, but the soul. In that moment, I understood something my pain had blinded me to. Losing Emily wasn't the end of my story. It was the beginning. And maybe, just maybe, her mother's cruelty had been the push I needed to find the life I was meant for. The past was ashes, the future was fire, and for the first time, I wasn't afraid to burn.